いい機体ね。
古い方さ。10年来の相棒だ。
ずいぶん無茶やってるみたい。
あちこち旅してるからな。本当は旅芸人なんだ。
冗談か本気かわからない人ね。
よく言われるよ。
火星にも行った？
火星生まれだ。
あそこは何でもあるんでしょ。こんなとこと違っていろんな人がいていろんなものがあって幸せに暮らしてるって。
金があるやつだけさ。
Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the second extract in this series from the first episode of Cowboy Bebop. So let's get stuck in.
いい機体ね。
古い方さ。10年来の相棒だ。
いい機体ね。
古い方さ。10年来の相棒だ。
Here I want to focus on the pitch accent. There are at least three, there are probably more than three, but there are at least three words that can be pronounced with kana, ka, ta in Japanese. We have ka, ta, we have ka, ta, and we have ka, ta. Now I read those flat, right? Completely flat, because I didn't want to give the game away. We're going to ask ourselves how pitch accent is working here. Are these three words pronounced the same way? Well, obviously not. In the standard dialect of Japan, the Hyojungo that's spoken around the Kanto region where Tokyo is, these words are pronounced like this: kata, kata, and kata. And the final one here is odaka, so any particle that follows it will be pronounced low. When you listen to Spike here, can you actually hear that clearly, which pattern he's using? Listen to it again if you have to. Go back and listen to it again. How obvious is it to you, intuitively, which of those patterns he's using? I've got to be honest, to me, in real time, it's not that clear. Does it matter? In my own experience, as a foreigner, as a non-native, as a gaijin, pitch accent is irrelevant to comprehension. I don't think I've ever failed to understand anything in Japanese as a consequence of my somewhat poor, actually, understanding of pitch accent. It's not that bad, but it's not great. How important is it to the natives? Well, that's another question. And for those of you who don't know, I have an entire series of videos here on pitch accent and its significance. For now, I'm just going to make the point that this humble-looking two-kana combination is actually more complex than it appears to be. Even if you know the correct pitch accent pattern for a word, there's absolutely no guarantee that you're going to be able to reproduce it accurately in real time, especially when you have to coordinate the pitch of the word in question with the pitch of everything else in the sentence that you're producing. And you have to think about grammar, and you have to think about the lexicon. There's a hell of a lot going on when we speak a foreign language. I mean, there's a hell of a lot going on when we speak our own language, but we're much better at it, and on the whole, we don't have to think about it, right? The level of automaticity you need to bring into your Japanese to get this stuff right easily when you're speaking quickly is actually a bit frightening to think about. That's not a reason to be completely scared off from trying to improve your pitch accent, but it is a reason, I think, not to beat yourself up too much if you have problems with it. It's not an easy system to grasp, although then there's no reason to expect it to be, right?
ずいぶん無茶やってるみたい。
あちこち旅してるからな。本当は旅芸人なんだ。
ずいぶん無茶やってるみたい。
あちこち旅してるからな。本当は旅芸人なんだ。
Here we need to focus for a moment on the difference between masculine speech and feminine speech. The female here, who as you might expect is speaking in a relatively feminine way, is much more likely than a man to drop the da, the copula, at the end of a sentence, the verb that means is, right? Men can do this kind of thing. I'm not saying they never do it, but it's characteristic of feminine speech. For what it's worth, this character has been imbued with all the characteristics that you would expect of a very feminine female character in an anime. It's actually kind of exaggerated. I spent about 4 years of my life in total in Japan, and I never met any woman who actually spoke like this, at least not to me. Spike, on the other hand, uses a lot of na. So he says, achikochi tabishiteru kara na. This na is something that you would expect to hear from a man, not a woman. I'm not saying that women can't use it. I'm not saying they never use it. But when you have one of these very feminine female characters, it would be quite surprising to hear her say it. He also says nanda. If you listen to him saying, honto wa tabi geinin nanda, that nanda is also somewhat masculine here. All I mean by that is that the female character would be more likely to say nano, again dropping the da. When you drop the da, the turns back into a no. Like I said, a lot of this is to do with characterization. The female character here, I can't remember her name, I don't know if I knew her name, but the female character isn't just a female character. She's obviously depicted as being very beautiful, very desirable, very feminine, and that accounts for this very stylized way of speaking that she has. Again, I reiterate, I don't think I ever met anyone who spoke anything like this. But these characteristics of the way that she speaks are all recognizably feminine characteristics. My understanding is that as Japanese society has changed over the last few generations, most obviously since the end of the war, Japanese as a language has come to be less gendered because this very, very clear division of gender roles, and if you like, in Japanese society has attenuated to some extent. So as male roles and female roles have converged, not completely, but to some extent, the way that men and women speak has converged to some extent. But I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to say any more about it.
冗談か本気かわからない人ね。
よく言われるよ。
火星にも行った？
火星生まれだ。
冗談か本気かわからない人ね。
よく言われるよ。
火星にも行った？
火星生まれだ。
This bit here is quite interesting. Notice that again the da has been dropped from the end of the sentence. If you want to turn this into a proper sentence, you have to put a da there to finish it off. She's saying Spike is a certain sort of person, right? It's actually quite difficult to translate this directly into English. 冗談か本気かわからない人. So the first bit there, the bit up to the hito, is modifying the hito. Hopefully you understand that. Okay, so Spike is a person who what? How do you translate that into English? The point is that it's difficult to tell whether Spike is being serious or not, right? So here's a person that, So Spike is a person with respect to whom it is difficult to say whether he's joking or not. That sounds really weird and unnatural. If you try and turn Spike into the subject, this is quite difficult. You're a person who kind of sounds like he's joking and kind of doesn't. That's a real rewiring of what she said. If I were to translate this, I'd probably just say, man, it's hard to tell whether you're serious or not. I can't tell whether you're serious or not. Again, if you look at, or if you listen to Spike's response, it's yoku iwareru yo. Yoku iwareru yo. What's that? I am often told that. Meaning-wise, that's an acceptable translation. It's not actually a very good translation. Again, a natural translation would be something like, yeah, I get that a lot. I hear that a lot. People often tell me that. So you can see here in this one small exchange how difficult it can be to translate Japanese directly into English.
あそこは何でもあるんでしょ。こんなとこと違っていろんな人がいていろんなものがあって幸せに暮らしてるって。
金があるやつだけさ。
あそこは何でもあるんでしょ。こんなとこと違っていろんな人がいていろんなものがあって幸せに暮らしてるって。
金があるやつだけさ。
This long sentence here is one that I really like. There's something incredibly Japanese about it, and I want to explain what I mean by that. You can see that we have lots of different te forms early on in the sentence, and then we have another te right at the end of the sentence, but it's a different te. It's the quotative to that sometimes ends up being pronounced as a te. So the first te is the te form of the verb chigau, which means to be different from. It means other things too, but it means to be different from. So it's part of a set expression that you can use like this. So you can say, for example, 私はあなたと違っていい人だ. I, unlike you, am a good person. That's the first te form. Then you have いろんな人がいて、いろんなものがあって. Here, she's listing different characteristics of the same place, so it's perfectly natural to list them all with the te form. When she gets to the last characteristic of the place in question, she reverts, she goes back into a sentence ending form. 幸せに暮らしてるって. What's she done? She's added this te, small tsu plus te. What's that final te doing? It's turning this into a quote. In what sense? She hasn't been to Mars. She doesn't know it directly, personally. She's telling Spike what she's heard about it, right? It's a quote in that sense. It's not a direct quote. It's just a summary of information that she's heard about Mars. It's hearsay. So in a translation, you might want to say apparently, or I've heard that, or something like that. You know, I mean, there are 100 different ways of translating anything in Japanese, but those are some things that you might want to use if you have any interest in translation. I used to be a translator, so I think about this stuff. In Japanese, often they're just going to leave it hanging like this. It might not be very clear to you what it's doing, but it's overwhelmingly clear to the Japanese, and even a non-native like me, after all my years interacting with Japanese, I know exactly what she's doing. So this is just normal, you've got to get used to it. That's it for today. Hope this was useful as always. I'm sure I'll see you all again. Thanks very much. Ciao ciao. Bye bye.